The first light of morning over China's national sports games carried an unusual weight, one that not even the largest stadium lights could conceal. As crowds filled the seats and cameras panned across the carefully choreographed opening ceremony, a small but unmistakable symbol appeared among the spectators: a blue fish. It was subtle, almost gentle in form, yet powerful in meaning. To many observers, it could have been dismissed as an innocuous drawing. But to those who knew, it represented you, the young man whose mysterious death continues to haunt conversations across continents. The fish was no ordinary symbol. In several dialects across China, the pronunciation of Yu's name mirrors that of dragonfish. For the thousands who silently carried the blue fish icon on badges, posters, and digital screens, it was an act of remembrance shielded under the guise of sports fandom. Yet one moment stunned the world. A blue fish sign quietly lifted just meters from Xi Jinping himself. The cameras streaming the ceremony did not linger on it, but audiences online captured the frame, froze it, and shared it instantly. That silent image traveled faster than any protest chant ever could. Authorities tried to downplay the symbol's relevance, but it was too late. The blue fish had become a quiet anthem, a shape of grief and unresolved questions. It was a message disguised in simplicity, delivered directly to the country's highest seat of power without a single word spoken. Those who raised it did not shout, did not disrupt, did not confront. They simply held up a memory. In Taiwan, thousands of kilometers away, Yu's story carried its own echo. Supporters there turned to spiritual tradition to express their frustration and sorrow. They gathered at temples dedicated to the city god, a guardian spirit of justice and moral order, to perform a ritual rarely seen in the modern political era. On slips of red paper, they wrote the names of 17 individuals they believed bore responsibility for Yu's death. These names were placed before the deity in a ceremony symbolizing moral judgment. For many in Taiwan, this was not just a cultural ritual. It was a form of resistance grounded in heritage, a way to give voice to what governments could not openly address. The temple atmosphere was thick with incense smoke and restrained anger. People of all ages arrived, some in groups, others alone. None came to shout or accuse. They came to record their plea in the language of tradition, hoping the old gods would witness what human institutions had ignored. Yet the emotional gravity of the ritual extended far beyond the spiritual sphere. It raised questions about cross-strait perception, about how Yu's case had transcended borders to become a test of collective conscience. Each name written was not merely a record of blame, but a testament to how deeply this story had cut into the psyche of the international Chinese-speaking community. And each ritual offering reinforced the belief that justice, in whatever form, must be pursued. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, the story took on another dimension. In the United States, diaspora groups and human rights organizations organized rallies demanding clarity, accountability, and justice. What began as small gatherings grew into marches that threaded through cities like Los Angeles, Seattle, and New York. Participants carried candles, placards with Yu's face, and banners calling for transparency. Many of them had never met Yu, but they recognized something universal in his fate. A fear that truth could be buried without a trace if people remained silent. The tone of the American rallies differed from the quiet symbolism in China and the spiritual protest in Taiwan. Here, voices rose loudly, amplified through megaphones and rhythmic chants. Speakers from Asian American communities expressed pain, anger, and solidarity. Some shared personal stories about relatives back home, about online surveillance, about their own fear of speaking on sensitive topics. In this environment, the demand for justice became collective rather than individual, a shared responsibility rather than a distant tragedy. But in the rush of global sympathy, a darker development crept in. As the story of the blue fish, the temple ritual, and the rallies spread online, so too did misinformation. AI-generated videos began circulating across social media platforms, purporting to show massive anti-government protests erupting inside China. These videos showed crowds chanting slogans, flags burning, and tear gas filling city streets. To the untrained eye, they appeared shockingly real. The problem was that none of it had happened. Experts soon identified the videos as artificially fabricated, created with advanced generative models capable of blending real backgrounds with unreal actions. The clips were then boosted by anonymous accounts eager to manipulate global perception. Some did it for political agendas, others for attention, and many simply out of ignorance. But the effect was immediate: confusion, anger, and a flood of misguided commentary. For activists and supporters of Xi, the fake videos were a painful setback. They feared that the attention on the blue fish symbol or the city god ritual might be overshadowed by sensational but false imagery. They worried that the Chinese government would use these fabricated clips as justification to discredit legitimate concerns. And they understood that once misinformation takes hold, it becomes harder for truth to find its footing again. Back in China, the authorities tightened digital surveillance. Searches related to the blue fish symbol were scrutinized. Images from the sports ceremony were quietly filtered out. Online discussions referencing the raising of the symbol near Xi's presence were swiftly removed. Yet, despite these efforts, the image persisted on international platforms, shared endlessly by those who believed that quiet resistance should never be erased. The power of the blue fish lay not just in its symbolism, but in the subtle courage behind it. Those who carried it took risks, not dramatic, visible risks, but risks embedded in the mundane act of attending a sports event. They navigated a world where intention must be hidden behind metaphor, where truth is spoken through imagery rather than speech. Their presence was a reminder that protest can be quiet without being weak. In Taiwan, the temple rituals continued. People gathered day after day, leaving offerings of fruit, candles, and incense. Many brought handwritten letters describing their hopes for Yu's family. Some prayed silently, while others whispered short pleas for moral redress. Every offering, every folded paper, added to a growing archive of civilian expression. The city god temple, usually visited for blessings of luck, health, and career, became a sanctuary of grief and defiance. Even the temple caretakers remarked on the unusual volume of visitors. Journalists documented the practice, noting that political expression through religious ritual has deep historical roots in Taiwanese culture. It was a protest that no law could forbid, no authority could dismantle. Meanwhile, the rallies in the United States evolved into structured campaigns. Organizers held panel discussions, educational workshops, and community meetings discussing authoritarianism, misinformation, and digital manipulation. Lawyers specializing in human rights law began drafting statements urging international monitoring. The story of Xi had become larger than one tragedy. It had transformed into a catalyst for conversations many had long avoided.